Great. I want to show you how to create the SSH keys, and so I'm gonna just create a new user from scratch, so you see the whole process, and that way you can start creating your own repositories. So here I'm gonna pick a username. It has to be one that Git doesn't have. So I'm gonna call it testkit from 0. It can only contain, so it cannot contain underscores. So let's do testkit dash from 0. Then I'll put an email, testkit, or let's say test user at from 0.io. We'll create a password, and then I sign up for GitHub. So as we saw earlier, they have like the different plans. I'm choosing the free plan here, and I'm gonna finish signing up. So now I have my user testkit from 0 here, and I want to create the SSH keys. So let's see how we do that. Okay, so now we head over to this gear icon here, the settings. I press there, and then I go to SSH keys, and it says SSH keys. There are no SSH keys with access to your account. Add an SSH key. So this is what we're gonna create now on our terminal. So you can use the terminal as we have been talking about on the Mac, or you can use git bash, which actually has the SSH gen utility to generate keys on Windows. So if you're on a Mac, you're going to use terminal, and on Windows, you're going to use the git bash. So let's switch over to our terminal, and the command, I'm going to put it on as a description, as a text on your lesson. But let's see where we're at. We're here at our users folder. In this case, it's the test user person that's creating this. And normally it will create a .ssh directory, which we don't have right now here. We just have like the normal like directories. So we're gonna generate our key by using the following command: ssh-keygen-t rsa-cap c, and then our email. And we don't have to get into details. Those are like different parameters that we're using. We're using the RSA encryption protocol. And once you type that, of course, you put your own email. Then you press enter, and it says it's generating the private RSA key. Basically, it's going to generate 2 keys. And the thinking in this with this approach is that SSH has a public key, which is the one that you can distribute, and the private key, which is the one that you keep on your local machine and you never ever publish or put anywhere. So it says enter file in which to save the key. You can leave as is. Usually SSH will look for a specific name pattern, and if you use something different, then you have to like explicitly tell it to do that, and there's a way to do that, but you can research that. For now, we're just going to use ID underscore RSA. So press enter there, and then you put a passphrase. A passphrase is basically like a password for every time the machine wants to use this passkey. I recommend you do that if you're doing it for your laptop, because if somebody gets a hold of your laptop, then they have your keys and they can access anything. But if you're using this on a server that's more protected and it's not moving around, then the passphrase doesn't make a lot of sense. But I'm going to create the password now. I have to repeat it, and now I have created my private and public key. So if I do an ls on SSH, I will see that I now have an ID RSA, which is the private key, and an ID RSA pub, which is the public key. So now what I need to do is to dump the contents of this RSA public key and copy and paste it and put it on the on GitHub. So let's do that. So you see this, I just gonna select this whole thing, copy it, and then I'm gonna add an SSH key. I can call it ID DSA or any other title, and then you copy and paste the key. So I add the key, and now I have this key set up for GitHub. And basically what happens now is that anytime I do operations with my repository from GitHub, it'll pass this as, instead of the username and password that you normally use, this is much more secure. It'll pass the private key to match this public key, and then the connection is going to be set up. So let's try doing an operation with a repository. Okay, so now I head back to the user. I click here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new repository. So I click on repositories and then click on new, and now I'm going to call this test git. This repository name has to be unique from all your repositories. You can put a description there, and but we leave it as is. Create this repository. Okay, so now I can basically either clone this, which would mean that it would create basically the repository from scratch from GitHub, or if I want to add something that I've already worked on locally, I can do the one on below. One thing to note though is that it's saying via HTTP, but we're gonna have to switch that to SSH. So make sure to press SSH here, because you have set up your SSH keys. So the command is a little different, as you'll see in the commands themselves. But so let's try the second one. Let's say that we created a repository locally on our computer. So let's go do that. So I'm gonna make the directory test-git, right? As you can see, I named the directory the same as the repository. That's you don't have to do that, but it's a good practice. So now I cd to test git, and now I do git init, right? So now we have initialized our repository. And remember, before you do anything, you have to set up your username if you haven't done it globally. So git config username test user, and then git config user.email test user at from0.io. Oh, I meant config. Perfect. Okay, let's clear the screen and let's just create a readme. It's a good practice to always have a readme on your repository, and I'm going to use the markdown format, which is something that you can research. It's kind of like a formatting engine, but let's do that via readme and then put this is my test repository from the Git course. So I write that. If I do git status, I see that I have a new file. I add it, and then I commit using, a good commit message. We have our first commit. Perfect. Now we're going to copy and paste this line here. Remember, have this SSH selected, and we basically add the remote repository for this GitHub account. So I copy and paste that. Now that remote repository is added, and I basically can do now git push origin master. Now it's connecting through the SSH keys that that we are going to be using. But first, because it hasn't seen that github.com server ever in its SSH path, it's saying that if this is the right server. So I'm going to say yes. So now it's asking me for my password, which is a good thing. I enter it, and we have transmitted our first change. So now if I go here, and I'm going to go to the user, and I go to test git, I'll see that I have my readme file, and everything looks good. If I go to the commits, I see that first commit message, and it's hash, and I can see the changes that were done, which is basically added this file on readme. So that's pretty much it. It's very easy once you do it the first time, and we're gonna check out some other GitHub functionalities in a few lessons.